Good morning, Praise Church. As always, it's great to see you, great to be able to worship with you. And it is an exciting season coming up here to help us connect with others and to connect with God as well, but to love God, love others, and to make a difference in this area. There's a lot of areas for you, a lot of ways that you can connect to do that. It's just a fun season for me. I love the fall season. The fall season, out of the 4 seasons, 3 seasons we have, whatever we have. Out of the seasons we have, fall is my favorite. Anybody else like the fall the greatest? I just love it. It's a change. It's a respite from the heat. I love football. Football's on. We get like 3 days, like I think it starts in November, where the temperature is 50 degrees, right, or less, or something. The fire's in the backyard. We love to sit around a fire. It's just so much fun. But we have a small group launch, and then Servolution is coming up. Sunday in the Park is coming up. Baptism. It's Sunday in the Park. I think it was Sunday in the Park. The reason why we did Sunday in the Park is because we didn't have a church, right? We were a church of nomads. And that just reminds us, as Tammy mentioned, this is 1 year. Last year at this time, we were watching the water rise, right? It was coming down. And I remember, we canceled service because we had a guest speaker flying in from Ontario to Houston, and we had to make that decision early on. So we made that Wednesday that we were going to cancel service just to be on the safe side. But I was going to go with a couple staffers to Encounter Church in Groves, and we were just going to go worship with those guys. And when I woke up that morning, I don't know that we ought to go. And it's like, this really is going to be a big deal. And as the day went on, as you guys know, watch the news and hear about people taking on water and even rescues, and it's like, my goodness. And so some of us got back in our homes pretty quickly, and some took 6 months, some has taken a year. But I think it's important for us as a church to remember, I see a lot of people that's come into Praise today that they're still not in their homes. And it's so easy for me to forget what it was like, to get back in the routine and to think what it's like to have to adapt. But another thing for those that aren't in your home, I know that, I look back, think about God's provision. We're still here, right? You're still here. God's provided. He's not going to abandon you now. At the same time, those who are in your homes or never was affected, it would be good to pray, but not only pray, but to do something tangible as well. Amen? Amen. So let's remember that. All right. Well, today we begin a brand new series called Major Move. It's about the church. It's prepping us to be the church that we need to be. If you are new to Praise Church, this is one of the best series that you could come in on, because you will learn that if you cut us, what we bleed, what we sweat, what our ambition is as a church. And it's a good way for you to figure out whether you want to be a part of this church. If you're not new to Praise, this is your home, Praise is you, then it allows you to at least remember who you are. Because if we want to make the difference that we want to make, we need to make sure that we're on the same page. So throughout the history of Praise Church, there have been certain times, like in your life, you've had certain times that were defining moments. And we are right now in a defining moment. And that's why I'm going to take the next 7 weeks, and I'm going to talk about who we are as a church, what we need to be before we go over into the major move. It's a defining moment. The next 6 months of this church life will determine the future of Praise Church, maybe up to 10, 20 years from now. I don't say that lightly. What we do, you, me, the person next to you, that's the church, right? It's you and me and the person next to you. It's just you and me. We could make up the church probably. But what we do is critical for the future of Praise Church. What we do is critical for your children and my children. And I'm going to explain that to you and explain why that is so. But I'm also going to give you some stats about where we are. The next 6 months will determine how we're going to interface with probably what will be a lifetime, an opportunity of a lifetime. So the present status, prior to Harvey, and I'm going to give you this information because it's necessary for you to know, for you to understand why we're talking about what we're talking about. Prior to Harvey, last year at this time, our church was experiencing growth. We were running between 11 and 1,200 people. That was our highest numbers. Harvey hit. We lived the church nomad life, as many of you lived with us, for 6 months. Now, we didn't have a building, but everyone knows we still had a church. Amen? Yeah, it didn't stop us from worshiping, from serving. And we still added people to the church. In fact, last night at my small group meeting, one of the guys there was talking about how he rededicated his life, found God again while we were a nomadic church, and it's still affecting his life. We returned back to this location in February with the grand welcome home celebration, where 1,600 people came back. Here's a picture of the parking lot, just one of the services. So you can see there's cars as far as the eye can see. At one time, I understand coming into 10 o'clock service, Guess Road, right there. Is that Guess? Yeah. That road right there. I get Walker and Guess mixed up. Guess had cars all the way back to Voth Road, right? It was like that line coming in. Then we go into summer, and summer is typically a slower season, a maintaining season for churches. But as you saw this year, it was a strong season of growth for Praise Church. So right now, 2 weeks ago, we had 1,500 people here on site at Praise Church. Now I want you to think 1,500 people from 1,100 people last year at this time. That's 400 people. Last week we had 1,400 people. That's 30% growth. We have 280 children that are being discipled in a week from birth to 5th grade. So in the 10 o'clock service, this one right here, as there's very few seats available. There's some back here. There's a few spotty seats. But I want you to know, since we've had the growth, we added 2 weeks ago, I think 40 to 50 extra chairs. And as you can see, there's 40, 50 extra chairs already been filled. 10 o'clock service is when the newest people come to church because it's kind of built in their system. So we saw, this is getting full. And then the 11:45 is getting full. What are we going to do? We thought, we need to add a 4th service, right? That's what you do. You have an opportunity, you have need, you go after it. When are we going to do it? Well, we can't do a 4th service on a Sunday, but we could do it on a Saturday night. So we were like, we're going for it. Because that's what you're supposed to do. Right? There's a need. You're supposed to sacrifice everything to fulfill the need. It doesn't matter what you have to do to make it happen. You make it happen. And when staff was like, yeah, that's what we'll do to help meet the need. And we were going to do it. Then it just got this uneasy feeling inside. And it's like not more than just a stomach thing. It's like you feel like God's speaking to you. It's like, okay, we're holding off. We're not going to do this just yet because I don't know what's going on. And so, well, are we going to meet or not? I don't know. I just don't have the peace about it. And then I had peace about what not to do, and that was we're not going to have it. And here's the reason why. Because months before, I wrote on my whiteboard, and I felt like God was leading me this direction to go health over growth. Health over growth. Because healthy things grow, right? You don't have to, if something's healthy, it just grows. You don't have to. So just make sure you focus on health, not on growth. So we began to do that, and I began to look at the infrastructure of finances and job descriptions in our jobs here, and then the personnel, our staffing, and then you. How can we help make you healthy? And I thought, if we do a 4th service, that's gonna put extra work on our staff. It's going to pull them away from their families, but it's not just for them. It's for their wives, their spouses, their husbands and wives. It's for the kids that they're going to be pulled away from, because it's not just 2 hours that they're going to come. It is literally probably like a half a day. They're not going to be able to go off. So I said, you know what? Our staff and the staff wives and our volunteers and staff husbands and our volunteers, when we go over the new facility, we need to be full, not depleted. Amen? And so we're not going to do it. Well, what would be the alternative? Let's fill every seat that we have among the 3 services. That just makes sense, right? If we have seats available, let's fill that. And that's when we begin to say, hey, if you could give up an hour or two and go to that 8:30 service, we'd love for you to do that. Do you know today, I bet we had 350 people in that 8:30 service. Our church did it. And they freed up seats so that we can still get people in this 10 o'clock service. And so we're going to fill up those 3 services. When those 3 services are filled, we're going to add an overflow room where we have audio and video, and we're going to make it happen. And, we're just growing on every level. 412 Student Ministry meets on Wednesday nights at 6th to 12th grade. They're running 240 students, teenagers. It's amazing. You guys ought to be clapping on that. No, don't clap. Don't give it up. That's obligatory. Okay, he said a clap. No, this is amazing. Where else do we have an opportunity to influence 240 students, like 6th through 12th grade? Then on Tuesday night, there's 140 young adults, praise young adults, 18 to 25, that are passionate about God, passionate about finding purpose, and they're having their service here. Small groups are about to launch, and pull in on this because I want you to see with the growth that we're experiencing now, plus what's about to happen in the next few months, I want you to see where we are. Small groups are about to launch. Small groups are the best way that we can disciple people. Life change happens best in the context of a small group, of a deep, meaningful relationship centered around Jesus. 412 is going to have their color party, which draws hundreds of students on Wednesday night. It's very attractional. Tim Barnett, which is an apologist, is going to be with us in a couple weeks. He's going to help train us about how to defend our faith. There's parent-child dedication, in which many family members come to praise to support those that are dedicating their children. There's Baptism Sunday. Anybody ever been here for our Baptism Sunday? It's packed. It's exciting. It's a celebration. Then we have Thank You Sunday, where we're going to cancel service and go out to the park on 421 like we did last year. It'll be the second annual. Then there's Christmas Eve service, which is very attractional for people to come here, new people to come to praise. And then there's New Year, where people are going, I want to do better. I want to make some changes. Do you see what's happening? We're growing now, and yet we have events that are going to be attractional, that's going to pull more people into praise. So what do you anticipate? While we as a church are in a season of growth, we're going to grow even more. Then to add to that, somewhere within the early part of 2019, we're going to be worshiping in our new facility. Yeah. So in 2016, we went public and we started a campaign to raise $1.5 million. And by the way, we are now officially at the $100,000 and less mark. So we're on the very low countdown of that's a lot, $1.5 million. So we got $100,000 left. And we're going to be over there worshiping. We're on our last lap. We're just months away. And here's what church growth consultants tell us. That when we get over there, we could expect 30% growth. 30% growth. Now let's just use the numbers that we're at right now at 1,400. 30% of that is 420. 1,400 plus 420 additional people bring us to 1,820 people. And that's if we don't grow any more from now to Christmas. That's using a 1,400. You know who those 420 people are going to be? Your family, your coworkers, your neighbors, those in city government, those that you play and do clubs with and business with. That's who's going to be here. And right now, when we say we're building for stories that are yet to be told, that means that right now, they're disconnected from God. They're lonely. They're feeling like they're condemned, that God can't forgive them, that they've done too much, that God's not going to, couldn't come around them, wouldn't run to them. Their families could be in jeopardy. They have yet to sense the feeling of seeing a Heavenly Father run to them and embrace them and say, welcome home. You haven't gone too far. You haven't experienced, if you're a follower of Christ, what you've experienced of feeling that warm embrace of Jesus. And when they come, my question is, when they come, they will come. What type of church will we be when they come? Will we be prepared? Will we be there to welcome them? Because it is an opportunity that's rare. It's possibly an opportunity that's once in a lifetime that we'll ever get to experience this again. So we have to be prepared. So Leonard Ravenhill, you've heard me say this before. He said the opportunity of a lifetime must be seized in the lifetime of that opportunity. The opportunity of a lifetime must be seized in the lifetime of that opportunity. Here's what that means. There's going to be some things that happen to you in your life that it's going to have a window, an expiration date. And you have to catch it. It's time sensitive. You have to catch it during that window. We're preparing for a major move that's going to give us an opportunity to share the life-giving message and ethos of Jesus Christ with more people than ever. And I want it to be clear here. It's not about a building. I'm glad we're going to have a new building, but it's never been, at Praise Church, it's never been about a building. We never thought you had to have the fanciest things to draw a crowd. We just thought you had to preach Jesus, be compassionate, create an irresistible environment, and people will beat down the doors to get here. Because Jesus really is, in the pure sense of Jesus, he really is irresistible. So it's not about a building, but it is about a church. It is about Jesus building a church that can be effective, that can be exert some change in this culture. So as we have this opportunity of a lifetime, we have to think about it. We have to prep. And when I said earlier that we have 6 months to prepare for something that may set us up for the next 10, 15, 20 years, it is because, look, when a family is giving birth to a baby, they don't wait to prep the house or the room after the delivery. You don't wait for the baby to arrive to start preparation. You start preparation now. You start 6 months before the baby's born. You're painting walls. You're getting the crib ready. You're getting a place for the baby to live. You're getting food so you can feed the baby. And that's what I'm saying right now. Listen, please hear me. Right now, we're 6 months or so, I don't know exactly, until we have an opportunity of a lifetime. We as a church, we have to prepare. Right? We have to make sure that we're ready. What are we going to focus on? Growing? You know what? I think we ought to focus on getting healthy. Because healthy things will grow. Now, I don't know Leonard Ravenhill that much. I don't know much about his writings. He was a pastor from 1907 to 1994. He challenged Western Christianity. But he also said this: today's church wants to be raptured from responsibility. And there ought to be a collective no in this room. We ought to not say, how can we not take responsibility for being the church of Jesus Christ? We ought to be saying, how can we assume responsibility? Today's church wants to be raptured from responsibility. No. Anybody else say no with me? Not us. Not on our watch. Right? And he also said, Jesus did not come into the world to make bad men good, but he came into the world to make dead men alive. I love that. He didn't come to tweak your life, to change a few things here and there. He made you were dead in your sins. And he came and changed you and brought you back to life. I love it when Jesus talks about the church. Here's the instruction part of the message. I told you where we are as a church, but I want you to know the instruction. This is the theological side of what the church is. And here's what Jesus said in a conversation in Matthew. He said, now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? Like, what's the word on the street? Right? They said, well, some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And he said to them, but who do you say? Who do you say I am? And Simon Peter replied, well, you're the Christ. You're the Messiah. You're the one that we've all been waiting for. The Old Testament was predicting. You're the Son of the living God. And Jesus answers him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but God, my Father who is in heaven. I love this part. And I tell you, I can see Jesus with fire in his eyes, with his voice resilient, steadfast, saying, and I tell you, Peter, you're Peter, and on this rock, I'll build my church. I'll build my church. And then he says, and the gates of hell, Peter, the gates of hell, not even the gates of hell will prevail against it. And you have to think, when Jesus says, I'm going to build my church, what was his listeners hearing? What does Jesus mean? I mean, if we could say, Jesus, tell me what your definition is so that we can build what we be a part of what you want us to build. What is it that you envision when you said, and I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it? It's an odd thing because Jesus took a secular word and he repurposed it for a religious setting. To my knowledge, that word church, which means ecclesia can either be spelled with a K or C, depending on whether you have a preference for K's or C's. Both are right. But ek means out from and to, not just out, not like you're coming out of a room, you're actually coming out of a room to go into something else. And it's kaleo, ecclesia, means to call. It means to call out from, to go into. So Jesus is taking this word, and what it meant when Jesus was using it, it was used with the Greeks that if something was going on in culture, maybe leadership wasn't ruling right, there would be a person, they would call him a magistrate, would call out a group of people from their homes and would gather them together and say, hey, I want you to come out from where you are, and I want you to assemble at the city square or in this room or at this assembly, and we're going to gather together and we're going to meet for the purpose, we're coming out into for the purpose of changing this culture. Let me read a quote. This is just a quote to let you know how it was used maybe back in the day. It says in 594 BC, way before Jesus used it, 594 BC, Solon allowed all Athenian citizens to participate, regardless of class, even the Cretes. He was allowed them to participate. And here it is, in the church, they call it here the assembly, was responsible for what? Declaring war, military strategy, and electing officials. Now here's what I want you to see. Jesus takes and he repurposes a word that when they heard church or ecclesia, they would not have immediately thought of a religious setting. Repurposing the words, we're not unfamiliar with that. I mean, the last word that I've heard that was repurposed, I knew almost exactly what it meant because of the context that it was used, and that is the word roasted, right? It was a repurposed word. It was roasted, because I heard someone say, they went like this, you got roasted. Oh, you got roasted. You got roasted. And I didn't have to go look it up. I knew what it meant. Well, before that time, the only thing I roasted was peanuts, right? I didn't know what roasted meant, but I knew that when someone said, oh, you got roasted, they were repurposing a word, and I knew someone just put somebody in their place, right? And now that means they got roasted. Well, Jesus is saying, hey, Peter, I'm going to build my church in the gates of hell. I'm going to build my ecclesia, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So what is Jesus saying? I'm going to build this thing that I have called out this group of people. And I've called them to an assembly or to a meeting or to be a force. And they're here, like Jesus is the magistrate, calling out people, and we're here to affect change in the culture. And he says, that's what I'm doing, and I will build that. And then I love it, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I want to let you know, you haven't been called to be a part of a stodgy, stiff, exclusive, non-moving organization. You have been called out to be part of an organism that makes a difference wherever it is, to be aggressive, to go in the dark places, to take the light of Christ into the dark places and to shine it. That's what Jesus meant when he said, I will build my church, call them out, into something, and the gates of hell will not even prevail against it. You're not a part, and we've all been a part. I'm not being critical of other churches, but we've all been a part of churches that we thought you couldn't move anything if you wanted to. You can't even get along. I mean, you don't have to have the gates of hell to prevail against you. You prevail against yourself. It's a sad thing because this is something that Jesus died for. It's something Jesus said, this is my plan of taking my ethos, my culture, my message into all of the world. So the ecclesia should never be waiting for God to move. He's already moved. God's waiting for us. Again, not being critical, but you'll see churches spend a lot of time praying for revival. And I think we should pray. We ought to do more than pray, too. We ought to have some action. Because I think we're saying, God, we're waiting on you. And a lot of times God's like, what else can I do? I sent my son to die for you and to bring the reconciliation to all mankind. Don't wait on me. I'm waiting on you. And so we realize who we are as the church, that you have been called out of darkness into light to serve. You're part of a bigger movement. 1 Peter 2:9 says it like this: you're a chosen race. You're a royal priesthood. You're a chosen race, a royal priesthood. You're a holy nation. You're a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him. Look at this. Who's called you out of darkness. And what has he called you into? He's called you out of darkness into his light. So here's the church. Here you are. I want to define what we are as a church. We are people that have been called out of darkness, out of the world's ways, into something else, not just left abandoned to come out of something, but to go into something for the purpose of exerting change or restoring this world back to God's original. Until the day Jesus comes and has the renewal of all things, the consummation of his work. We saw Jesus calling out people. Matthew 4, he's calling out disciples. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, It was Simon, who's Peter, Andrew, his brother. What they're doing, they're casting a net in the sea, for they were fishermen. He says to them, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. What do? Immediately they left their nets and they followed him. Follow me. He says, follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left their boat. They left their father. I bet Zebedee wasn't too happy about that. It's like there goes 2/3 of his workforce. Left their father and they followed him. Look, this is what Jesus is doing. He's going to Levi. He's going to the tax collector's booth. He's saying, hey, I'm going to call you out. Quit swindling people. Quit stealing from people. I'm calling you into a new way of living. And he would call people out. Don't you remember? You remember when he said your name? You remember that moment he said, hey, I called you for a higher living than this? You remember when he said, you're forgiven? Now come out of that. Don't walk in the sin. Come out of that. I've called you out of that into this. Remember when he saved your family? Can you remember when he looked you in the eye? Say, hey, I've chosen you. Come follow me. I want to be your rabbi. I want to be your savior. Follow me and I'll make you. No, I'll bring you into the light. We're the church. We're called out, but it doesn't mean that we're any more special than anybody else. We're more valuable than anybody else. We've just been able to receive from God's love. And that's what I'm saying. Look, if I could ask you, what type of church would you love to attend? I mean, if you could just think of the greatest church in the world, what would that church look like? You could give me a definition of that. And some people would say, I would love to be a part of a church where they invest in young people. I mean, they just pour into young people, the youth. I would love to be a part of a church where the worship experience is just always engaging. I would love to be a part of a church where people are so interested in discipleship and they're growing and going to the next level. Or I'd be a part of a church who reached out to the community. They saw a need and they just went out there and they always were serving. You know what you're saying when you say, I want to go to a church like that? Yeah, you got it. If you want to go to a church like that, then you be that person. Because you are the church. Jesus said, you know what my church is? It's the people that I call out. It's not a building. It's us. It's us. And for whatever reason, we get to come together at this time in our life. I don't know why we're together. God's seen that we're in His body. This is His body right now. One part of a bigger church. So whatever type of church you want, you be. What type of church would you like people who are hurt on church and they have no more trust on church? They're mad at God, angry at God. When they come back in, they're one of the 420 people that come in. What type of church would you want them to experience? Then you let them experience. You do that. You want one to be friendly? Then you be friendly. That's why we're talking about this. Napoleon Bonaparte, one day he pointed at China on a map and he said, if she ever wakes up, pointing to China, if she ever wakes up, she will, let me say exactly, she will shake the world. Napoleon pointed to China and said, if she ever wakes up, she will shake the world. And I want to tell you, church, whenever the church has woken up, it made a difference. It shook the world. Churches built hospitals. They ran into battle. When people were leaving because of sickness, they were bringing sick people into their homes, even though they would get the sickness themselves and die. The church, when it wakes up, is an incredible, mighty force. Because you got to think about it. We're founded by the creator of the universe. We are motivated by a love, unconditional love, from a man who demonstrates the greatest act of love that history's ever known. And then we were empowered by the Spirit that raised Christ from the dead. That if that same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwell in us, He will quicken our mortal bodies. So what else could we have? If God is for us, who could be against us? Amen? So let's be the church. Let's be the people that He calls out. Not out, but into something to exert change. We're not any better than any church in this area. I hope we all stay humble. But we can't deny that something's happening. So I want for the next six weeks now, what do we need to be as a church? So that when we have those people who are coming in and looking for God, we can say, we have something to give you. For 6 months, we have been preparing. Welcome, come home. Welcome home. We've been looking for you. We've been praying for you. We've been praying that God would move into your life. We've been praying that God would restore your family. We've been thinking about you. We want God to call you out into his marvelous light as well.